The August heat clung to my skin like a second layer as I pushed through the service entrance of Celestino's, my worn sneakers silent against the polished marble floors. 6 months I'd been working here, and I still felt like an imposter every time I walked into the dining room. The scent hit me first, always the same combination of expensive wine, fresh herbs, and old money. I'd learned to breathe through my mouth during my shifts, trying not to think about how a single meal here cost more than my monthly rent. Luciana. Marco's voice cut through the kitchen chaos, sharp with his usual disapproval. You're 10 minutes late. Again. I swallowed the excuse about the subway delay, about the elderly woman who'd collapsed on the platform and how I'd waited with her until the paramedics arrived. Marco wouldn't care. He never cared about the reasons, only the results. I'm sorry. It won't happen again. It better not. His eyes, cold and calculating, swept over my appearance. Fix your hair. You look like you've been running through the streets. This is Celestino's, not some diner in Queens. I nodded and ducked into the staff bathroom, staring at my reflection in the mirror. Dark circles shadowed my hazel eyes, testament to another sleepless night in my 4th-floor walk-up, where the neighbors' fights bled through paper-thin walls. My honey-blonde hair had indeed come loose from its required bun, wisps sticking to my damp forehead. 26 years old, I thought, securing the pins with practiced efficiency. This wasn't supposed to be my life. 5 years ago, I'd arrived in New York with a portfolio of photographs and dreams too big for my small-town Ohio upbringing. I'd been accepted to Parsons, had a partial scholarship, believed with the certainty of youth that talent and determination were enough. Then my mother got sick. Stage 4 lung cancer, the doctor said, despite never smoking a day in her life. I'd withdrawn from Parsons before classes even started, spent my college fund on treatments that only bought her 6 more months. And when she finally passed, my father had looked at me like I was a stranger, remarried within a year, and moved to Florida without asking if I wanted to come. So here I was. Student loans from a degree I never got, dreams packed away with my camera equipment I could no longer afford film for, serving champagne to people who'd never known what it meant to choose between rent and food. Luciana! Marco's voice again. Table 12. VIP reservation. Lorenzo Valenti and his associates. Do not mess this up. The name meant nothing to me then. I grabbed a tray, balanced 6 crystal champagne flutes, and made my way through the dining room. Celestino's at night was transformed. Candlelight flickered across white tablecloths, reflecting off silverware that probably cost more than my car. The other diners were the usual mix of Manhattan elite, businessmen celebrating deals, couples marking anniversaries with bottles of wine older than I was, families whose jewelry could fund a small country. But table 12 commanded attention in a way the others didn't. 4 men in suits that screamed custom tailoring sat in the private alcove, partially hidden by decorative screens that offered the illusion of privacy while maintaining the prestige of being seen. They spoke in low voices, Italian words flowing like music beneath the ambient jazz playing from hidden speakers. And then there was him. Lorenzo Valenti sat at the head of the table with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned his right to take up space. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved by a Renaissance sculptor. All strong lines and sharp angles softened only by lips that looked like they rarely smiled. His suit was charcoal gray, the kind of fabric that moved like water, and a watch on his wrist that I recognized from a magazine spread about the world's most expensive timepieces. But it was his eyes that stopped me mid-step. Dark, almost black in the candlelight, they lifted to meet mine as I approached, and I felt the impact of that gaze like a physical touch. "Your champagne, gentlemen," I managed, keeping my voice steady despite the sudden acceleration of my heartbeat. I began pouring, starting with the man to Lorenzo's right. My hands were steady, practiced from months of repetition. But I was hyper-aware of Lorenzo's presence, of the way his fingers drummed a slow rhythm on the white tablecloth. of how his attention seemed to track my every movement. "You're new," he said, his voice a low rumble with an Italian accent that softened certain consonants. It wasn't a question. 6 months, sir." I kept my eyes on the champagne, watching the bubbles rise in perfect columns. "And before Celestino's?" The question surprised me enough that I glanced up, meeting his gaze again. "Sir?" "You move like someone trained for something else, not serving, something that requires precision and observation." His head tilted slightly. "Photography, perhaps? Or art?" My hands trembled just for a second, but enough that I nearly overfilled his glass. How could he possibly know that? "I don't know what you mean, sir." "Don't you?" A slight smile curved his lips, transforming his face from intimidating to breathtaking. "The way you positioned yourself when you approached. Checking sight lines, natural lighting, angles of approach. The way your eyes cataloged everything in the room before you even looked at us. And your hands." He gestured to where I held the bottle. "You're not gripping it like someone who carries trays for a living. You're holding it like you'd hold a camera. Gentle, but firm. Protective." I set the bottle down with more force than necessary, rattled by how completely this stranger had seen through me. "Will there be anything else, gentlemen?" "Your name," Lorenzo said. Not a request. A command delivered softly. "Luciana, sir." "Luciana." He tested my name like he was tasting wine. "Italian?" My grandmother's side. "Bella." "Beautiful." The word hung in the air between us, weighted with meaning I couldn't decipher. "Thank you, Luciana. That will be all." I retreated, my pulse hammering in my throat, feeling his eyes on me the entire walk back to the kitchen. "What did I tell you about engaging with the VIPs?" Marco hissed the moment I was through the doors. He asked me questions. I answered them. "You don't answer. You serve and you disappear. Valenti's not the kind of man whose attention you want, understand?" Something in Marco's voice made me pause. "What do you mean?" "Just stay away from table 12 for the rest of the night. I'll handle their service myself." But I couldn't stop thinking about Lorenzo Valenti as I moved through my other tables. Couldn't stop replaying the conversation, the way he'd seen things about me that I'd thought I'd hidden successfully. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just shifted, though I didn't understand what or why. The evening progressed with the usual rhythm. Orders placed, meals delivered, wine poured, plates cleared. I fell into the familiar choreography, my body moving on autopilot while my mind wandered. I was thinking about the photographs I used to take, the way I'd chase light across Manhattan, capturing moments of beauty in unexpected places. The elderly couple sharing a hot dog in Central Park, their hands intertwined despite arthritis. The little girl jumping in puddles in Washington Square, pure joy on her face. The homeless man feeding pigeons from his last piece of bread, such gentleness in his weathered hands. Those photographs were packed away in boxes under my bed now, along with my dreams. Some nights I thought about taking them out, submitting them to galleries again. But rejection hurt less when you didn't try. It was nearly 10 when I heard it. The sound was wrong before my brain could process why. A sharp crack that didn't belong in Celestino's refined atmosphere, followed by the distinctive sound of shattering glass. Time slowed in that impossible way it does during moments of crisis. I turned toward table 12, saw the window behind Lorenzo exploding inward, saw him beginning to twist in his seat, saw the red dot of a laser sight tracking across his chest. And I moved. Not thinking, not calculating the cost. Just pure instinct driving me forward as the second shot rang out. I hit Lorenzo with my full weight, driving him sideways out of his chair. We crashed to the floor, my body covering his, my hands instinctively going to his head to protect it from the impact. The third shot found me instead. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Not sharp like I'd imagined a bullet would feel, but massive. A wall of agony that radiated from my left shoulder through my entire body in waves. I heard screaming and realized distantly that it was coming from me. "Luciana!" Marco's voice high with panic. "Call an ambulance, now!" But I barely heard him. My vision was tunneling, darkness creeping in from the edges. I was aware of Lorenzo beneath me, his arms coming up to catch me as I began to collapse, his voice saying something urgent in Italian. His hand pressed against my shoulder, warm and firm, trying to stem the bleeding, and his face, those dark eyes now wide with something that looked like shock and fury, and something else I couldn't name. "Why?" I heard him ask, his accent thicker with emotion. "Why would you do this?" I wanted to answer. Wanted to explain that I'd seen the laser sight and moved without thinking. That saving him had been instinct, not calculation. But the darkness was pulling me under, and the pain was too much, and all I could do was whisper, "I saw you." Then nothing. Consciousness returned in fragments, the beeping of machines, the antiseptic smell of hospital, voices speaking in low, urgent tones. Massive blood loss, but the bullet went clean through. No major vessels damaged. Extremely lucky. Lucky. The word floated through my consciousness, absurd and surreal. I'd been shot, and that made me lucky. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt weighted down. When I finally managed it, harsh fluorescent lights made me wince. "She's awake." A nurse appeared in my field of vision, checking something on the IV pole beside my bed. "Welcome back, Luciana. You're in Presbyterian Hospital. You've been in surgery. The bullet went through your shoulder but missed all the major arteries. The doctors say you'll make a full recovery." Full recovery. The words should have brought relief, but all I could think about was the medical bills piling up, the shifts I'd miss at Celestino's, the rent that was already late. "There's someone who's been waiting to see you," the nurse continued. "He's been here since you arrived. Wouldn't leave even when we told him only family was allowed during surgery. Very insistent." She smiled slightly. "Very generous, too. He's paid for everything. The surgery, the hospital stay, all of it. Private room, best doctors. Says his name is Lorenzo Valenti." My heart rate spiked, betrayed by the monitor's increasingly rapid beeping. "You don't have to see him if you don't want to," the nurse added quickly. "I can tell him you're not ready for visitors." But even as she said it, I knew I would see him. This man whose life I'd saved. This stranger who'd seen through me with a single glance. "It's okay," I managed, my voice rough. "He can come in." The nurse nodded and left. A moment later, the door opened. Lorenzo Valenti looked different from how I remembered him at the restaurant. His perfect suit was gone, replaced by a white dress shirt, with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows and dark trousers. His hair was disheveled, as though he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and there were smudges of exhaustion under his eyes. But it was his expression as he approached my bed that made my breath catch. Raw emotion flickered across his face before he controlled it. Something between guilt and wonder, and a possessiveness that should have frightened me but didn't. "Luciana," he said, my name on his lips like a prayer. He pulled a chair close to my bed and sat, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot," I said, then wondered if joking was appropriate. The nurse said I'll recover, that I was lucky. Lucky. The word came out bitter. "You took a bullet meant for me." "That's not luck, Piccola. That's sacrifice. That's bravery beyond anything I've ever witnessed." "I'm not brave. I just reacted. Without thinking of the cost, without calculating the benefit. You saw a stranger in danger and threw yourself in front of death." His dark eyes held mine with unsettling intensity. "Do you understand how rare that is? How extraordinary?" I didn't know what to say. Nothing about what I'd done felt extraordinary. I'd seen the laser sight, seen him about to die, and moved. Simple as that. The hospital bills, I started, suddenly remembering. My insurance barely covered routine checkups. Taken care of, Lorenzo interrupted. Everything. The surgery, the private room, the specialists, the medications, the follow-up care. All of it. I can't let you do that. I can't afford to pay you back, but I'll find a way. You saved my life, Luciana. His voice was firm but gentle, and he reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, before taking my hand in his. His fingers were warm, calloused in unexpected places. You put yourself between me and death. That creates a debt I can never truly repay. And I won't insult what you did by letting you worry about money while you heal. But I don't even know you, I whispered. Then let me remedy that. He settled back in the chair, but didn't release my hand. My name is Lorenzo Dante Valenti. I'm 34 years old. I was born in Naples, but came to America when I was 10. My father built an empire here, and when he died 8 years ago, I inherited it. I have businesses throughout the city, some legitimate, some less so. I'm not a good man by most standards, Luciana, but I'm an honest one, at least with you. The admission should have frightened me, should have made me pull my hand away and demand he leave. But there was something in his eyes, a vulnerability beneath the power that kept me silent. I don't have friends, he continued. I have associates, allies, employees, people who stay close because of what I can do for them or what I might do to them if they leave. My world is built on transactions and fear and carefully maintained control. He paused. And then you threw yourself in front of a bullet for me. Not because you knew who I was, not because you wanted something from me, just because you saw someone about to die and couldn't let it happen. Anyone would have done the same, I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. No. His thumb traced a gentle pattern across my knuckles. They wouldn't. Most people would have run, screamed, hidden, done anything except put themselves in harm's way for a stranger. His eyes held mine. You're extraordinary, Luciana, and now you're mine to protect. Whether you accept that or not, you're under my protection for as long as I draw breath. The possessiveness in his words should have alarmed me, but exhaustion and pain medication were making everything feel distant, dreamlike. Rest now, Lorenzo said softly, releasing my hand and standing. I'll be back tomorrow to check on you. You don't have to. I want to. He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back. The men who tried to kill me, Luciana, they saw you save me. They know your face now, which means you're not safe. Not until I find them and eliminate the threat. His voice went cold. But I promise you this. No one will touch you. You have my word, and my word is the most valuable thing I possess. He left before I could process what he'd said, leaving me alone with machines that beeped steadily and a truth I couldn't escape. I'd saved Lorenzo Valenti's life, and in doing so, I'd bound myself to him in ways I was only beginning to understand. Outside my window, the city lights glittered like scattered diamonds. Somewhere out there, people wanted Lorenzo dead. And now, by extension, they wanted me dead too. I should have been terrified. Should have been planning my escape the moment I was well enough to run. But all I could think about was the way Lorenzo had looked at me. Like I was precious. Like I mattered. Like I was something worth protecting at any cost. And God help me. Part of me wanted that protection. Wanted to be seen the way he saw me. Wanted to matter to someone again after years of being invisible. The pain medication pulled me under into restless sleep, filled with dark eyes and the sound of shattering glass, and the weight of impossible choices. When I woke hours later, there was a photograph on my bedside table. One of mine, I realized with shock. The elderly couple in Central Park. Somehow Lorenzo had gotten into my apartment, found my boxes of photographs, and brought me this. And beneath it, a note in elegant handwriting. You saw me. Now, let me see you. L. I held the photograph against my chest and cried, not from pain or fear, but from something deeper, something that felt dangerously like hope. Lorenzo came every day. Not brief, obligatory visits, but hours spent in the chair beside my hospital bed. Sometimes he worked on his laptop, the soft clicking of keys a strangely comforting rhythm. Other times he simply sat, reading newspapers in both English and Italian, occasionally sharing headlines with me in that accent that made even mundane news sound lyrical. The mayor is claiming credit for reduced crime rates, he said on the second day, a hint of dark amusement in his voice. When in reality, the only reason the numbers dropped is because certain families reached an understanding about territorial boundaries. Certain families? I repeated. You mean organized crime? He looked up from the paper, meeting my gaze steadily. I mean businesses that operate outside the legal framework but serve necessary functions within the city's ecosystem. The world isn't as black and white as you might think, Luciana. And which side are you on? Whichever side keeps people I care about safe. His eyes held mine. Including you now. I wanted to argue that I wasn't his to care about, that we were strangers bound only by one impulsive act. But the words died in my throat, because he was looking at me like I mattered, like I was someone worth protecting. And I hadn't felt that way in so long. On the third day, a different visitor arrived. I was alone for the first time since the shooting, Lorenzo having left to handle what he vaguely termed business matters. I was dozing, the pain medication making everything feel soft and distant, when a voice I didn't recognize pulled me awake. So you're the girl who took a bullet for Lorenzo Valenti. My eyes snapped open to find a woman standing at the foot of my bed. She was perhaps 30, beautiful in the way that suggested professional maintenance, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun and designer clothes that screamed money. But it was her eyes that made me uneasy, calculating and cold, assessing me like I was a problem to be solved. Who are you? I managed, reaching instinctively for the call button. Isabella Castellano. She said the name like it should mean something to me. When I showed no recognition, her lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I see Lorenzo hasn't mentioned me. How interesting. I think you should leave. I will. But first, I wanted to see for myself what kind of woman throws herself in front of a bullet for a man she doesn't know. Isabella moved closer, her heels clicking against the linoleum. Tell me, Luciana. May I call you Luciana? Do you have any idea what you've stumbled into? I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? She picked up the photograph Lorenzo had brought me, the one of the elderly couple in Central Park. He's already been to your apartment, already going through your things, learning your secrets. That's how Lorenzo operates. He sees something he wants, and he takes it, wraps it up in protection and obligation until you can't tell the difference between safety and captivity. My heart hammered against my ribs. He's just being kind. I saved his life. And now you belong to him. Isabella set the photograph down with deliberate care. That's how it works in our world. You perform a service, you incur a debt, and Lorenzo always collects. Your world, I said, finding my voice despite the fear. You're part of it too. The Castellano family. You're the ones who tried to kill him. Something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that I'd made the connection. Lorenzo and my family have complicated history, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to give you a choice, Luciana. One you won't get from him. What choice? Walk away, before you're in too deep. Before you become another pretty thing he keeps in a gilded cage. She reached into her purse and withdrew a business card, placing it on my bedside table. When you're ready to disappear, and you will be, eventually, call that number. I'll make sure you vanish so completely that even Lorenzo Valenti won't find you. Why would you help me? Isabella's smile was sharp. Because taking something Lorenzo wants is almost as satisfying as destroying him directly. Think about it. She left before I could respond, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm down the hospital corridor. I stared at the business card, my mind racing. Was she right? Was Lorenzo's protection just another form of possession? And why would Isabella Castellano, someone from a family that wanted him dead, offer to help me escape? The answer, I realized with growing unease, was that she wanted to hurt him. And somehow, I'd become a weapon in whatever war existed between their families. I was still staring at the card when Lorenzo returned 20 minutes later. He took one look at my face and went very still. What happened? His voice was calm, but I'd learned to recognize the tension beneath. Someone was here. Isabella Castellano. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but something dangerous flickered in his dark eyes. What did she say to you? That you collect debts, that I belong to you now whether I want to or not, that I should run before I'm in too deep. I met his gaze. Is she right? Lorenzo moved to the window, looking out at the city skyline. When he spoke, his voice was measured, careful. Isabella and I were engaged once, 5 years ago. An arrangement between our families meant to unite territories and end decades of conflict. The revelation hit me like a physical blow, though I had no right to feel betrayed. What happened? I discovered she was using the engagement to gather information about my operations, planning to use what she learned to destroy my family from the inside. He turned back to face me. The alliance fell apart. The war between our families resumed, and Isabella has spent the last 5 years trying to hurt me in any way she can. And now she's using me to do it. She's trying to. Lorenzo crossed back to my bedside, his gaze intense. Luciana, I need you to understand something. Yes, you saved my life, and yes, that creates an obligation. In my world, debts of blood are sacred. But this, he gestured between us, this isn't about debt anymore. Then what is it about? You saw me, he said simply. That night at the restaurant, before the shooting. You looked at me and saw who I was beneath the power and the reputation. And then you threw yourself in front of a bullet for that person. His voice dropped lower. No one has ever done that for me, Luciana. No one has ever chosen me without calculating what they'd gain. You're the first real thing in my life in longer than I can remember. You don't even know me. Don't I? He sat in the chair beside my bed, close enough that I could see the exhaustion etched into the lines around his eyes. You moved to New York 5 years ago with dreams of being a photographer. Your mother died of lung cancer, and you spent your college fund trying to save her. Your father remarried and left you behind. You work double shifts at Celestino's trying to pay off student loans for a degree you never got. You haven't touched your camera in 3 years because the dream became too painful to hold on to. Tears pricked my eyes. How do you know all that? Because I pay attention. Because from the moment you walked into that dining room, I couldn't look away. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull back, and gently wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. Isabella was right about one thing. I do want to protect you. But it's not about debt or obligation. It's because the thought of anything happening to you makes me want to burn the world down. The intensity in his voice should have frightened me. But instead, I felt something warm unfurl in my chest, dangerous and intoxicating. The men who shot at you, I said, needing to shift to safer ground. Have you found them? Lorenzo's expression hardened. Not yet, but I will. The shooter was a professional, hired through intermediaries. But someone gave him my location that night. Someone who knew I'd be at Celestino's, at that specific table, at that specific time. A traitor. Within my inner circle. The words were bitter. Someone I trust. Someone who's been close to me for years. And until I know who, everyone is suspect. Even the people protecting me? No. His voice was firm. Marco Santini has been with my family since before I was born. His loyalty is absolute, as is his younger brother's, Antonio, who leads my security detail. You're safe with them. But I heard what he didn't say, that beyond those two men, Lorenzo trusted no one completely. Isabella left me a card, I said quietly. Said to call if I wanted to disappear. Lorenzo's jaw tightened, but when he spoke, his voice was controlled. And do you want to disappear? I looked at him, really looked. Saw past the dangerous reputation and the expensive clothes to the man beneath. A man who'd lost his father too young, who'd inherited an empire built on blood and obligation, who lived in a world where everyone wanted something from him, where trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. A man who'd spent hours sitting beside my hospital bed for no reason, except that he wanted to. No, I heard myself say. I don't want to disappear. Something in Lorenzo's expression softened, vulnerability flickering across his face before he controlled it. Then you'll let me protect you? Let me move you somewhere safe while you recover? Your home, I said, remembering his earlier offer. You mentioned a guest wing. Yes, complete privacy, your own space. But with security that Isabella and whoever wants me dead can't penetrate. He paused. I won't lie to you, Luciana. Having you in my home is selfish. I want you where I can see you, where I know you're safe. But the choice is yours. It always will be. The choice is yours. When was the last time someone had given me a real choice? Not just the illusion of one, but genuine agency? Okay, I said. I'll come to your home. But Lorenzo... I waited until he met my eyes. I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't lie to me. Not about the danger I'm in. Not about who you are or what you do. I'd rather face hard truths than comforting lies. For a long moment, he was silent. Then he extended his hand. I promise. Complete honesty between us, no matter how dark the truth. I took his hand, feeling the calluses on his palm, the strength in his fingers. Then we have a deal. His smile was slow and genuine, transforming his face. We have much more than that, Piccola. We have the beginning of something I never thought I'd find. He didn't say what that something was. He didn't need to. I could feel it too. The dangerous pull between us. The recognition of two broken people who'd found something unexpected in each other. And as Lorenzo sat beside my bed, his hand still holding mine, I realized that Isabella Castellano had been both right and wrong. Right that Lorenzo wanted to protect me, that he'd wrapped that protection around me like chains, but wrong about the captivity. Because for the first time in 5 years, sitting in a hospital bed with a bullet wound in my shoulder, I didn't feel trapped. I felt seen, valued, safe. And that was more dangerous than any threat Isabella could make. The Valenti estate was nothing like I'd imagined. Yes, there was wealth, the kind that whispered rather than shouted. But as Marco Santini helped me from the car 4 days after my discharge, what struck me wasn't the grandeur, but the sense of history weighing down every stone. The main house was built in 1924, Lorenzo explained, appearing at my side with the fluid grace I'd come to recognize. My grandfather purchased it when he first made his fortune. Every Valenti has lived here since. The mansion rose before us, all stone and wrought iron, surrounded by manicured gardens that somehow felt wild, despite their careful tending. Inside, the furnishings mixed old-world elegance with modern comfort. Ancient oil paintings alongside contemporary art, antique furniture positioned near sleek technology. "Your wing is this way," Lorenzo said, his hand at the small of my back, protective without being controlling. He led me through corridors that smelled of lemon polish and old books, finally stopping at a set of double doors. Inside was a suite larger than my entire apartment. A bedroom with a 4-poster bed, a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, and a bathroom with a tub deep enough to swim in. "There's a panic button beside the bed," Lorenzo explained, pointing to a discreet red button on the nightstand. "Press it and Marco or Antonio will be here in seconds. The windows are bulletproof, the doors reinforced. You're safe here. Luciana." Safe. The word felt foreign on my tongue. "Thank you," I managed, suddenly overwhelmed by the enormity of what I'd agreed to. "This is too much. It's exactly what you deserve." He moved to leave, then paused at the door. "Dinner is at 8 if you're feeling up to it. But there's no pressure. I'll have something sent up if you'd prefer to rest." After he left, I explored my new temporary home, touching expensive fabrics and staring at artwork that belonged in museums. On the bedside table, I found a stack of photography books: Ansel Adams, Dorothea Lange, Henri Cartier-Bresson, all first editions, and beside them, my camera. Not just any camera, but my Leica M6, the one I'd sold 2 years ago to make rent. Somehow Lorenzo had tracked it down, purchased it back, and left it here for me. I picked it up with trembling hands, feeling the familiar weight, the smooth metal against my palms. When I looked through the viewfinder, the world narrowed to perfect composition, and for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Dinner that first night was an intimate affair in a smaller dining room that felt more like someone's home than a mansion. Lorenzo had changed into dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with lean muscle and a tattoo I'd never noticed before. Latin words wrapped around his left wrist. "Veritas vos liberabit," I read as he poured wine. "Water for me, given the pain medication. The truth will set you free." "My father had the same tattoo," Lorenzo said, settling into the chair across from me. "He believed that lies, even comfortable ones, were a form of captivity. That only truth offered real freedom. Ironic, given his business required so much deception." "Is it?" Lorenzo's lips curved slightly. "My father was honest about what he was. He never pretended to be legitimate, never hid behind false righteousness. In a world of liars, his honesty was revolutionary." A woman appeared with the first course, a delicate pasta and cream sauce that smelled divine. She was perhaps 60, with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a simple bun. "Luciana, this is Rosa," Lorenzo introduced. "She's been with the family since I was a child, the best cook in New York." Rosa blushed at the praise. "Mr. Lorenzo exaggerates, but welcome, Miss Luciana. It's good to have someone young in this house again. Too much testosterone. All these serious men with their serious business." She patted Lorenzo's shoulder affectionately. This one especially, too serious for his own good. I watched the exchange, fascinated by this glimpse of Lorenzo in his natural environment. Here, he wasn't the intimidating figure from the restaurant or the intense protector from the hospital. He was just a man who clearly loved his cook-like family. "Rosa practically raised me," Lorenzo explained after she'd left. "My mother died when I was young. Cancer, like yours. Rosa stepped in, made sure I ate, forced me to do homework, threatened to box my ears when I got too arrogant. I'm sorry about your mother. It was a long time ago. I barely remember her now." But something in his eyes suggested that wasn't entirely true. "Tell me about yours. What was she like?" And somehow, over pasta and candlelight. I found myself talking about my mother in a way I hadn't in years. About her laugh that could fill a room. About how she'd encouraged my photography even when my father thought it impractical. About the last coherent conversation we'd had, when she'd made me promise not to give up on my dreams. "A promise you've broken," Lorenzo observed gently. "Dreams die when reality gets in the way. Or they evolve." He leaned back in his chair, wine glass balanced in long fingers. "I found something interesting when I was retrieving your camera. In one of your boxes, there was a series of photographs. Portraits of people in your neighborhood. The bodega owner. The woman who sells flowers on the corner. The teenager who plays saxophone in the subway." My breath caught. Those photographs were my most personal work, taken during the darkest period after my mother's death. They were extraordinary, Luciana. Raw and real, and full of such humanity. His dark eyes held mine. "That's not a dead dream. That's a living talent waiting to be used again. I can't afford—" "What if money wasn't an obstacle?" He cut me off gently. "What if you had unlimited resources, all the time you needed, and complete freedom? What would you photograph?" The question hung in the air between us. What would I photograph? "Truth," I heard myself say. Not the posed, pretty version. The real truth of people's lives. Their struggles and small victories. The moments that matter but no one sees because they're too busy looking at what's shiny and perfect. Lorenzo smiled, slow and genuine. "Then do it. Stay here as long as you need to recover. Use that time to photograph whatever calls to you. I'll cover all your expenses, all your needs. Consider it payment for saving my life." "That's too much. It's not nearly enough." He leaned forward, intensity returning to his gaze. "Luciana, you gave me my life back. Let me give you your dreams back. Fair trade." Before I could respond, Antonio appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Boss, we have a situation." Lorenzo's entire demeanor shifted, the relaxed dinner companion disappearing behind the mask of the man who controlled an empire. "What kind of situation?" "Perimeter breach. Eastern Gate. The cameras caught someone trying to bypass the security system." Antonio's eyes flicked to me, then back to Lorenzo. Professionals. They knew where to cut. Lorenzo stood, his movements controlled but radiating coiled danger. "Wake the full security detail. I want every inch of this property checked. And get Luciana to the safe room." "I'm not going to any safe room," I protested, rising despite the ache in my shoulder. "What's happening?" "Someone is trying to get to you." Lorenzo's voice was calm, but his eyes were steel. "Isabella's people, most likely, or whoever wants me dead and sees you as leverage." The casual mention of people wanting to kidnap or kill me should have sent me into panic. Instead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. "Then let me help. I see things, remember? Details others miss. Maybe I can—" "No." Lorenzo's voice was final. "Antonio, take her to the safe room. Marco and I will handle the perimeter." "Lorenzo." He crossed to me in 2 strides, his hands framing my face with surprising gentleness, despite the urgency of the moment. "Please, Luciana. I can't focus on finding these people if I'm worried about protecting you. Let Antonio take you somewhere I know you're safe." The vulnerability in his eyes undid my protest. "Okay, but you come back. You promise me you come back." "Always." He pressed a kiss to my forehead, brief but intense. "I will always come back to you." Then he was gone, moving with Antonio toward the eastern wing, and I was left with Marco, who'd appeared silently, his hand resting on the weapon at his hip. "This way, Miss Luciana." The safe room was hidden behind a bookshelf in Lorenzo's study, accessed by pressing a sequence of books in the right order. Inside was a space roughly 12 by 12 feet, lined with monitors showing every angle of the estate, communication equipment, weapons, and supplies that could sustain someone for days. Mr. Lorenzo designed this himself after his father's death, Marco explained, his accent thicker with tension. He learned early that safety is an illusion unless you prepare for every possibility. I stared at the monitors, watching dark figures move through the gardens. Lorenzo appeared on one screen, a weapon I hadn't known he carried now visible in his hand, moving with the fluid efficiency of someone well-trained in violence. How many times has he had to use this room? I asked. Marco's expression was grim. More than any man should have to. This life, Miss Luciana, it comes with a price. People want what the Valentis have built. Power, territory, respect. They'll do anything to take it, including killing anyone who gets in their way. Including that, yes. We watched in tense silence as Lorenzo and his men swept the grounds. I counted 8 security personnel, all moving with military precision, all armed, all clearly willing to kill or die for the man who employed them. What had I gotten myself into? But even as the thought formed, I knew the answer. I'd gotten myself into Lorenzo Valenti's life. And sitting in his safe room, watching him hunt threats in his garden, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to leave. Not because I was scared of whoever wanted me dead. Not because I needed his protection or his money or his gifts. But because when Lorenzo Valenti looked at me, I felt seen in a way I'd never experienced before. He didn't want me for what I could give him, or who I could be. He wanted me for exactly who I was. Broken dreams, student debt, and all. And that was worth risking everything for. The monitors showed Lorenzo and Antonio converging on the eastern wall where a rope still dangled. They were speaking urgently, Lorenzo's face hard with fury. Then his phone rang. Even through the monitors, I could see his expression change as he answered. Could see the shock, then rage, then something that looked like grief flash across his features. He spoke briefly, then ended the call and turned to Antonio, saying something that made his security chief's face go pale. Marco's radio crackled. Bring her to the study. Now. We found something. The walk back through the mansion felt endless. Lorenzo was waiting in his study, his white shirt now smudged with dirt, his carefully controlled mask cracked just enough that I could see the rage simmering beneath. What happened? I asked. They didn't come to take you. His voice was flat, emotionless in a way that was more terrifying than anger. They came to leave a message. He handed me a photograph and my blood turned to ice. It was me, asleep in my hospital bed. The angle suggested it had been taken from inside the room, not through the window. Someone had been standing right beside me while I slept, vulnerable and unaware. But it was the message scrawled across the bottom that made my knees weak. She dies next, unless you give us what we want. I see. Isabella Castellano. This changes things, Lorenzo said quietly, taking the photograph back. I thought they wanted to use you as leverage, but this, he gestured to the image, this is a death threat, direct and unambiguous. What do they want from you? Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of secrets long held. There's something Isabella believes I have. Evidence of her family's crimes that could destroy them completely. She thinks my father gave it to me before he died. He met my eyes. The problem is, I don't have it. Never did. But she won't believe that. Then what do? We find out who actually has what she wants. We end this. His jaw tightened. But first, I need to tell you something. About your mother. The sudden shift made my head spin. What about my mother? What hospital was she treated at? For the cancer? Mount Sinai. Why? Lorenzo pulled up something on his computer, turned the screen toward me. It was a billing record. My mother's billing record. And at the bottom, under Additional Insurance Provider, was a name that made my heart stop. Valenti Medical Foundation. My father ran a charity, Lorenzo explained, paid medical bills for families who couldn't afford treatment. He believed, his voice cracked slightly, he believed that no one should watch someone they loved die because they couldn't pay for care. Your mother was one of the people he helped. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. That's impossible. We never applied for any charity. The bills were covered by some anonymous donor. My father. Lorenzo's dark eyes held mine. He had people who identified families in need. Your mother's case was flagged. He paid for her treatment, Luciana. 6 months of care, experimental treatments, everything. He gave your mother 6 more months of life. Tears streamed down my face. Why are you telling me this? Because our connection goes deeper than one bullet. Deeper than coincidence. He moved closer, his voice rough with emotion. My father saved your mother, and years later, without knowing it, you saved his son. Some might call that fate. I call it impossible, I whispered. I call it destiny. His hands framed my face, thumbs wiping away my tears. You were meant to be in my life, Luciana. Everything that brought you to that restaurant, to that moment, it all led here. To us. He kissed me then, and it wasn't gentle. It was desperate and claiming and full of all the words we hadn't said. I kissed him back with equal fervor, my good hand fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer despite my injured shoulder, despite every logical reason this was a terrible idea. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lorenzo rested his forehead against mine. Stay with me, he breathed. Not because you're afraid, not because you need protection. Stay because you want this. Want us. I shouldn't want this, I whispered. You're dangerous. Your world is dangerous. I should run as far and fast as I can. But you won't. No. I met his dark eyes, saw my own desire reflected back. I won't. His smile was beautiful and terrible. Then you're mine, Piccola. And I'll burn down anyone who tries to take you from me. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Isabella's people had been caught, would be dealt with in ways I probably didn't want to know about. But inside Lorenzo's study, wrapped in his arms, I felt safer than I'd ever felt in my life. Even knowing that safety was an illusion. Even knowing that loving Lorenzo Valenti meant walking into fire, I chose to stay anyway. 3 weeks passed in Lorenzo's estate, and I fell into a rhythm I hadn't expected to find comforting. Mornings I spent photographing the gardens, capturing the way light filtered through ancient oak trees, how dew clung to rose petals like diamonds. The staff became my subjects. Rosa kneading bread with flour-dusted hands, Marco standing sentinel at the gates, Antonio laughing at some private joke with the younger guards. Afternoons belonged to healing. My shoulder ached less each day, the scar tissue forming in angry pink lines that Lorenzo traced with gentle fingers during the evenings we spent together. Because the evenings, those belonged to us. We talked for hours in his study, sharing stories from childhoods that had shaped us in different ways. He told me about his father's iron discipline, the lessons in strategy disguised as chess games, the moment at 16 when he'd realized the family business wasn't import-export, but something far darker. Did you ever think about leaving? I asked one night, curled in the leather chair across from his desk while he worked through paperwork. Every day, he admitted, signing something with a flourish. But legacy isn't something you abandon. It's woven into who you are. My father built this empire from nothing. Walking away would dishonor his memory, even if staying means living with constant danger. Lorenzo looked up, his dark eyes finding mine. The danger doesn't bother me anymore. I've made peace with the fact that someone might kill me tomorrow. He paused. What terrifies me now is that they might hurt you to get to me." The vulnerability in his voice made my chest tight. "I'm not going anywhere." "You say that now. But Luciana, this life—" He gestured vaguely, encompassing the mansion, the guards, the whole dangerous world he inhabited. "It takes pieces of you, slowly at first, then all at once. I don't want you to wake up one day and realize you've lost yourself trying to survive in my shadow." I stood and crossed to him, ignoring the twinge in my shoulder. "Then keep me in the light. Keep seeing me the way you did that first night. Don't let me disappear." He pulled me into his lap, careful of my injury, and kissed me with a tenderness that made tears prick my eyes. "Impossible. You're all I see anymore." But even as I melted into his embrace, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Some shift in the fragile peace we'd built. The shift came 3 days later, in the form of a phone call that changed everything. I was in the garden, photographing a butterfly that had landed on Rosa's roses when Lorenzo appeared. One look at his face told me something was catastrophically wrong. "What happened?" "My cousin Matteo." His voice was flat, controlled in a way that meant he was barely holding himself together. "He was found an hour ago, shot 3 times in his own home." The camera nearly slipped from my hands. "Is he alive?" "Barely." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "He managed to call for help before he lost consciousness. The doctors say if he survives the next 48 hours, he might make it." "Who did this?" "The same people who want me dead. The same people who threatened you." His dark eyes met mine. "But Matteo wasn't just shot, Luciana. He was tortured first. Someone wanted information from him." Ice flooded my veins. "What kind of information?" "About the Valenti family's operations, bank accounts, business partners, territorial agreements." Lorenzo ran a hand through his hair, the first time I'd seen him truly rattled. Whoever did this was looking for something specific, and they thought Matteo had it. "The evidence Isabella wants?" "Maybe, or maybe." He stopped, his expression darkening. "Maybe they thought Matteo was the traitor, the one who gave up my location at Celestino's." The implication hung heavy between us. If someone thought Matteo had betrayed Lorenzo, they'd tried to extract a confession through torture. "You don't think he did it?" I said, reading Lorenzo's face. "Matteo is family. Blood. We grew up together, learned the business together. He's been my right hand for 8 years." But doubt crept into Lorenzo's voice. "But someone gave up my location that night. Someone close enough to know my schedule, my security protocols. If not Matteo, then who?" Before I could answer, Antonio burst into the garden, his face pale. "Boss, you need to see this. Now." We followed him to Lorenzo's study, where Marco had already pulled up security footage on the large monitor. The timestamp showed the previous night, the camera angle capturing the eastern gate. "Watch," Marco said, pressing play. A figure approached the gate, too far away to identify clearly. But they didn't try to breach the security. Instead, they placed something on the ground, then disappeared into the shadows. "We found it this morning during the routine sweep," Antonio explained. "A package addressed to you, boss." Lorenzo's expression was unreadable. "What was in it?" Marco exchanged a glance with Antonio, then opened a folder on the desk. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. All of me. Me sleeping in my hospital bed. Me walking through the estate gardens. Me having coffee with Rosa in the kitchen. Me in Lorenzo's study, curled in the chair with a book. Someone had been watching me. Constantly. For weeks. "There was a note," Marco said quietly, handing Lorenzo a piece of paper. I watched the blood drain from Lorenzo's face as he read it. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. "Everyone out. except Luciana. Marco and Antonio left immediately, closing the door behind them. Lorenzo stood with his back to me, staring out the window, the note clenched in his fist. "What does it say?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. He turned, and the raw pain in his eyes made my breath catch. "It says Isabella knows about your mother. About my father paying her medical bills. About the connection between our families." His voice cracked. "And it says she's going to use you the same way my father used your mother, as a pawn in a game you never consented to play. I don't understand. My father's charity wasn't charity, Luciana." Lorenzo's words were bitter. It was leverage. He helped families in need, yes. But he also kept records. Used those connections when he needed favors, information, cooperation. Your mother's medical bills? Those came with strings attached. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "What kind of strings?" "Your father worked as an accountant for a company my father wanted information about. He gave up that information in exchange for your mother's care." Lorenzo met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Luciana. I'm so fucking sorry. My father saved your mother's life. But he did it to control your father. And now Isabella wants to use that same pattern against me. She wants to control you to control me." I sank into a chair, my mind reeling. Everything I'd believed about my mother's treatment, the mysterious donor who'd paid for everything, it had all been manipulation. My father's strange distance after her death suddenly made horrible sense. He'd been ashamed, compromised. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "Because I was afraid of this, of you looking at me the way you are now." Lorenzo's voice broke. "Like I'm exactly what everyone says I am. Like I'm my father's son, using people's pain as leverage. Are you?" The question hung between us, sharp and cutting. Lorenzo crossed to me, dropping to his knees so we were eye level. "I don't want to be. God, Luciana, I don't want to be anything like him. But I'm terrified that it's inevitable. That this life, this legacy, it corrupts everything it touches." His hands found mine, gripping tight, including you. Tears streamed down my face. "So what do we do? We end this, tonight." His jaw set with determination. "Isabella wants a meeting. She says she'll trade, the evidence she claims I have for you, a straight exchange. But you don't have what she wants. I know, which means this is a trap." Lorenzo stood, pulling me up with him. "But I'm going anyway, because the only way to protect you is to eliminate the threat completely. And if that means walking into Isabella's trap, then that's what I'll do." "No." I grabbed his arm. "You can't. She'll kill you. Maybe, but at least you'll be safe." "I don't want to be safe if you're dead." The words burst out of me, raw and desperate. "Lorenzo, please. There has to be another way." He pulled me against his chest, careful of my healing shoulder, and held me like I was the only thing keeping him anchored to earth. "There is no other way, Piccola. This is the life I chose. These are the consequences." We stood like that for a long moment, holding each other while the weight of impossible choices pressed down on us. Then the door burst open. Marco stumbled in, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead, his weapon drawn. "Boss, we have a breach. Multiple hostiles. They're already inside the house." Lorenzo's entire demeanor shifted, the vulnerable man disappearing behind the cold strategist. "How many?" "At least 10. Professional team. They bypassed our security like it wasn't there." Marco's expression was grim. "Someone gave them the codes, boss. Someone inside. The traitor. After weeks of searching, they'd finally made their move. And they'd chosen the worst possible moment." Lorenzo looked at me, and I saw the decision crystallize in his eyes. "Marco, get Luciana to the safe room. Don't open it for anyone except me or Antonio. No one else. Understand?" Lorenzo. Now, Marco. As Marco grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door, Lorenzo caught my hand one last time. If I don't make it back, don't. I pressed my fingers to his lips. Don't say it. Just come back to me. He kissed me then, fierce and desperate, pouring everything we hadn't said into that single moment. Then Marco was pulling me away, and Lorenzo was arming himself with weapons I'd never seen him carry, and the sound of gunfire echoed through the mansion I'd started to think of as home. And I realized with crystalline clarity that I'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with Lorenzo Valenti, just in time to lose him. The safe room's monitors showed chaos unfolding throughout the estate. Men in tactical gear moved through corridors I'd walked peacefully just hours ago. They moved with military precision, weapons raised, faces covered. On screen 3, I watched one of Lorenzo's guards go down, blood blooming across his chest before the camera angle shifted. How many of our people are still standing? I asked Marco, who was cycling through camera feeds with grim efficiency. 5, maybe 6. They had the element of surprise. His jaw tightened. And they knew exactly where our security was positioned. Every blind spot, every weakness in our coverage. The traitor has to be someone with complete access to our security protocols. Marco pulled up a schematic of the estate. There are only 4 people with that level of clearance. Me, Antonio, Rosa, and... He stopped, his face going pale. And who? I pressed. Lorenzo's cousin, Matteo. The name hit like a physical blow. Matteo, who was supposedly lying in a hospital bed fighting for his life. Matteo, who Lorenzo trusted absolutely. The shooting, I said, pieces clicking together. What if it wasn't an attack? What if Matteo staged his own torture to deflect suspicion? Marco's expression darkened. That sick bastard. He's been feeding Isabella information for months, probably years, and when Lorenzo started getting close to identifying the mole, Matteo created the perfect alibi. On the monitors, I watched Lorenzo and Antonio take cover behind an overturned table, returning fire at 3 advancing hostiles. Lorenzo moved with lethal efficiency, every shot precise, every movement calculated. This was a side of him I'd never seen. Not the thoughtful man who brought me photography books, but the dangerous heir to a criminal empire. And he was outnumbered. We have to help him, I said. My orders are to keep you safe. The boss would have my head if... Marco. I turned to face him. If Lorenzo dies out there, keeping me alive won't matter. Isabella will still want me dead. The only way any of us survive this is if we end it. Tonight. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. Rosa keeps a gun in the kitchen. She's former Italian Special Forces, believe it or not. If we can reach her, we'll have a better chance. Then let's move. Marco opened a hidden panel in the safe room wall, revealing a narrow passage. Service corridors. They run through the whole estate. The old owners used them for staff to move without being seen. Lorenzo kept them for emergencies. We moved through darkness, Marco's flashlight our only guide. The sounds of fighting echoed through the walls. Gunfire, shouting, the crash of breaking furniture. My shoulder throbbed with each step, but adrenaline kept me moving. We emerged in the kitchen to find Rosa calmly loading a shotgun, her gray hair still in its neat bun, her expression utterly serene. "Took you long enough," she said in Italian-accented English. "I've already taken out 2 of them. They think because I'm old, I'm harmless." Her smile was sharp. "Idiots." "We need to get to Lorenzo," Marco said. "East Wing, last I saw on the security feed I keep in my quarters." Rosa handed me a smaller pistol. "You know how to use this?" "Point and shoot, right?" She actually laughed. "Close enough. Try not to shoot Marco or me." We moved as a unit through the mansion, Rosa leading with the confidence of someone who'd fought in wars I'd only read about. Twice we encountered hostiles. Twice Rosa dropped them with ruthless efficiency before they even registered we were there. "You're terrifying," I told her as we stepped over an unconscious man. "I'm practical. There's a difference." She paused at a corner, peering around. "Clear. Move." We found Lorenzo and Antonio pinned down in the library, surrounded by 5 armed men advancing from different angles. Through the doorway, I could see Lorenzo's face, determined, focused, but bleeding from a cut above his eye. "Rosa, can you get a clean shot from here?" Marco whispered. 3 of them, yes. The other 2 have cover. Then we even the odds. Marco looked at me. "Luciana, I need you to create a distraction. Draw their attention for 5 seconds. Can you do that?" My heart hammered. "How?" "Scream, loud as you can. Make them think you're hurt." I took a breath, thinking about every acting class I'd taken in college, every moment of fear I'd experienced. Then I let out a blood-curdling scream that echoed through the mansion. The effect was immediate. All 5 hostiles turned toward the sound, their weapons swinging in our direction. Rosa's shotgun boomed 3 times in rapid succession. 3 men dropped. Lorenzo and Antonio used the distraction to take out the remaining 2. Silence fell, broken only by heavy breathing and the ringing in my ears from the gunfire. Lorenzo appeared in the doorway, his dark eyes finding me immediately. Relief and fury warred on his face. "What the hell are you doing out of the safe room?" "Saving your life, apparently." I stepped over an unconscious hostile. "You're welcome." He crossed to me in 3 strides, his hands framing my face, checking for injuries. "You could have been killed. So could you. We're even." Something shifted in his expression, anger giving way to something softer, more vulnerable. He kissed me hard, desperate, tasting of blood and gunpowder and relief. "Don't ever scare me like that again," he breathed against my lips. "Then don't make me watch you die on a security monitor." Antonio cleared his throat. "Boss, we need to move. There could be more of them." "How many did we neutralize?" Lorenzo asked, his arm coming around my waist, protective even now. 11 total. But Isabella wouldn't send everyone. She's too smart for that. Marco's expression was grim. "She'll have a backup plan." As if summoned by her name, Lorenzo's phone rang. He answered, putting it on speaker. "Lorenzo." Isabella's voice, smooth and cold. "I see you survived my little gift. I'm impressed. What do you want, Isabella?" "The same thing I've always wanted. What your father stole from my family. The evidence that could destroy us." She paused. "But I'm willing to negotiate now, because I have something you want too." Lorenzo's arm tightened around me. "I'm listening. Come to the old warehouse on Pier 47, alone. Bring what I want, and I'll tell you which of your trusted inner circle has been working for me all these years." Her laugh was cruel. "Oh wait, you already know, don't you?" Poor Matteo. Such a good actor. Did you really believe someone tortured him? He did that to himself, Lorenzo. Cut his own flesh, shot himself twice in non-vital areas, all to maintain his cover. Rage flickered across Lorenzo's face. "If you've heard him, he's here with me, alive and well and ready to watch you die. Come alone, Lorenzo, or I start sending pieces of your dear cousin back to you." The line went dead. Lorenzo stood very still, his face carved from stone. When he spoke, his voice was eerily calm. "She's bluffing. Matteo betrayed me. Why would she threaten him?" "Because she knows you," I said quietly. "She knows you'd sacrifice yourself even for someone who betrayed you, because that's who you are." He looked at me, and I saw the truth in his eyes. He was going to walk into that warehouse knowing it was a trap, knowing Isabella would kill him, because it was the only way to end this. No, I said firmly. You're not doing this alone. Luciana, I saved your life once already tonight. I'm not stopping now. I met his dark eyes steadily. We end this together, or not at all. For a long moment he studied my face. Then he turned to Antonio. Get the men. Everyone still standing. We're going to Pier 47. Boss, she said, come alone. And I'm going to, with an army hidden in the shadows. Lorenzo's smile was cold. Isabella wants to play games? Let's show her what happens when you threaten a Valenti. He looked at me, his expression softening. But you stay here, with Rosa and Marco. Please, Luciana. This is the one thing I'm asking you not to argue about. Lorenzo, please. His voice broke on the word. I can't focus on ending this if I'm terrified of losing you. Let me do what I need to do. Then I'll come back to you. I promise. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist on standing beside him. But I saw the fear beneath his determination, the way his hands trembled slightly as they held mine. Okay, I whispered. But if you're not back in 2 hours, I'm coming after you. He kissed me again, soft and lingering, like he was memorizing the taste of me. 2 hours. I'll be back in 1. Then he was gone, taking Antonio and the remaining security team with him, leaving me in Rosa's capable hands while he walked into almost certain death. And all I could do was wait, and pray that the man I loved would keep his promise to return. I lasted 45 minutes before breaking my promise. Rosa was cleaning her shotgun at the kitchen table, Marco pacing by the windows, when I stood abruptly. I can't just sit here waiting to find out if he's alive or dead. Miss Luciana, Marco started. No. I grabbed my camera from where I'd left it on the counter. Lorenzo is walking into a trap. Isabella expects him alone or with obvious backup. She won't expect someone with a camera who can document everything from a distance. Rosa looked up, her weathered face thoughtful. The girl has a point. What good are we here if the boss dies at Pier 47? Marco's jaw tightened. He'll have my head if anything happens to her. Then make sure nothing happens to me. I met his eyes. Please, Marco. I need to do this. I need to be there. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Rosa, you're with us. We stay in the shadows. We document everything. And at the first sign of real danger, we get Miss Luciana out. Agreed? Agreed. We took an unmarked car from the garage, Marco driving like he was auditioning for a racing team. The city blurred past, Manhattan giving way to the industrial waterfront where Pier 47 sat like a rotting corpse against the East River. The warehouse was exactly what I expected from a location chosen for murder. Crumbling brick, broken windows, darkness punctuated only by streetlights that flickered unreliably. Lorenzo's team will be positioned around the perimeter, Marco explained as we parked 3 blocks away. We go in through the south entrance, stay high and hidden. Your camera has zoom? Professional grade. I can shoot from anywhere. We moved through shadows, Rosa covering our backs with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. The warehouse had a catwalk 20 feet up that ran the length of the building. Perfect vantage point. From there, I could see everything. Lorenzo stood in the center of the warehouse floor, alone as promised, hands visible and empty. Around him, positioned in the rafters and behind crates, I counted at least 12 of his men. Hidden, but there. And across from Lorenzo, Isabella Castellano stood with 10 armed guards, her dark hair pulled back severely, her expression triumphant. And beside her, Matteo. But something was wrong. Matteo's hands were bound, his face battered and bruised in ways that looked fresh, real, not self-inflicted. Isabella, Lorenzo's voice echoed through the warehouse. I'm here, as requested, alone. Hardly. Isabella gestured to the shadows. Your men are competent, Lorenzo, but not invisible. I count 13 of them. Would you like me to point out their positions? Lorenzo's expression didn't change. Then we both know this isn't a fair negotiation. What do you really want, Isabella? I told you. The evidence your father had. The documents that prove my family's involvement in... She paused, smiling cruelly. Well, let's just say activities that would interest federal prosecutors. I don't have them. I never did. Liar. Isabella's hand moved in a sharp gesture, and one of her men struck Matteo across the face. Your cousin was very forthcoming before you arrived. He confirmed your father gave you everything before he died. Every secret, every piece of leverage, including what I need. I watched through my camera lens, photographing everything, when Matteo raised his head. Even from this distance, I could see the desperation in his eyes as he looked at Lorenzo. She's insane, Lorenzo, Matteo croaked. I never betrayed you. She took me from the hospital, tried to force me to give up information I don't have. But I told her nothing. I swear on my life, cousin. I told her nothing. The raw honesty in his voice made something click in my mind. I zoomed in on Isabella's face, catching the micro-expression of fury that flickered across her features when Matteo spoke. She was lying about Matteo being the traitor. But why? If Matteo didn't betray me, Lorenzo said slowly, then who gave you my location at Celestino's? Who's been feeding you information? Does it matter? Isabella's smile was sharp. Give me what I want, Lorenzo, and maybe I'll tell you before I kill you both. You're going to kill us anyway. True, but I can make it quick, or I can make it last days. She nodded to her men. Your choice. I was so focused on photographing Isabella that I almost missed it. A subtle shift in the shadows to her left. One of her guards adjusting his position, his face briefly visible in the dim light. Antonio, Lorenzo's head of security, the man who'd been with him for 8 years, who knew every security protocol, every safe house, every vulnerability. The real traitor. My hands shook as I zoomed in, capturing his face, the way his weapon was pointed not at Lorenzo, but at the other guards, positioned perfectly to take them all out. I had to warn Lorenzo, but my phone was on silent in my pocket, and I was too far away to shout without giving away our position and getting us all killed. Then I remembered. Lorenzo had given me something the week before, a pendant on a thin chain, beautiful and delicate. It has a panic button, he'd explained, hidden in the clasp. Press it and every phone my security team carries will vibrate 3 times, our signal for immediate danger. I'd thought it was paranoid. Now I grabbed it from beneath my shirt and pressed. Below, I saw Lorenzo's hand move subtly to his pocket as his phone vibrated. His eyes scanned the warehouse, looking for the threat, and found Antonio. The moment their eyes met, Antonio knew he'd been compromised. His weapon swung toward Lorenzo. Everything happened at once. Lorenzo dove left as Antonio fired. Matteo, hands still bound, threw himself at Isabella, knocking her off balance. Lorenzo's hidden men opened fire on Isabella's guards, and Rosa, standing beside me on the catwalk, took aim at Antonio with her shotgun. For the Valenti family, she said calmly, and fired. Antonio went down. The firefight lasted less than 2 minutes. Isabella's men were professionals, but they'd been positioned to kill Lorenzo, not to defend against an assault from multiple directions. One by one, they fell. Isabella herself tried to run, but Lorenzo was faster. He caught her at the warehouse entrance, his hand fisting in her hair, his gun pressed to her temple. Why? His voice was ragged. Antonio was loyal for 8 years. What did you offer him? Nothing. Isabella's laugh was bitter. I didn't offer him anything, Lorenzo. He came to me, 3 years ago. Said he was tired of living in your shadow, tired of watching you inherit everything while he got nothing. He wanted to destroy you from the inside. 3 years, Lorenzo breathed. He's been planning this for 3 years? Longer, probably. But he approached me 3 years ago with proof he could deliver you. And he's been feeding me information ever since. Isabella's eyes gleamed with malice even in defeat. He told me about Celestino's. Told me about the girl who saved you. Told me she'd become your weakness. Lorenzo's hand tightened in her hair. Where are the documents? The evidence you claim to want? There are no documents, you fool. Isabella's smile was vicious. Your father never had anything on my family. I made it up. A lie to draw you out, to make you desperate enough to take risks. Antonio suggested it. Said if I threatened something precious to you, you'd expose yourself. Luciana, Lorenzo whispered. Your photographer girlfriend. Yes. Isabella's gaze found me on the catwalk. Antonio said you'd burn the world for her, that she was the first thing you'd ever loved more than the family business. And he was right. Lorenzo released her abruptly, his weapon never wavering. Marco, take her. Let the authorities deal with her. You're not going to kill me? Isabella sounded almost disappointed. No. Lorenzo's voice was cold. I'm going to let you live with the knowledge that you failed, that you threw away everything, your family's reputation, your freedom, your life, chasing a lie. That seems like worse punishment than a bullet. As Marco led Isabella away in handcuffs, Lorenzo moved to where Matteo sat against a crate, looking exhausted and battered, but alive. I'm sorry, cousin, Matteo said quietly. I should have seen Antonio's betrayal sooner. Should have protected you better. You nearly died keeping my secrets. Lorenzo pulled him into a fierce embrace. You have nothing to apologize for. I climbed down from the catwalk, Rosa beside me, my camera full of evidence that would put Isabella away for life. Lorenzo saw me, and something in his expression cracked. Relief and love and residual fear all mixed together. He crossed to me in long strides and pulled me against his chest, holding me like he'd never let go. You pressed the panic button, he said into my hair. You saved us. Again. I saw Antonio, saw him positioning to take out your men. I pulled back enough to look at his face. I couldn't let him kill you. You weren't supposed to be here at all. I know. I'm terrible at following orders. I traced the cut above his eye gently. Get used to it. His laugh was shaky, exhausted. I love you, Luciana. I should have said it before. Should have told you the moment I realized it. I love you more than I've ever loved anything or anyone. Tears streamed down my face. I love you too, even though you're dangerous and complicated and your life is insane. Especially because of that? Maybe. I smiled through tears. Take me home, Lorenzo. Our home. 6 months later, I stood in a gallery in Chelsea, surrounded by my photographs. The exhibition was titled Truth and Shadows, a collection documenting the hidden world I'd discovered through Lorenzo. Not the violence or the crime, but the people. Rosa kneading bread. Marco standing guard as the sun rose. Lorenzo himself, caught in a moment of vulnerability, staring out his office window with an expression of profound loneliness I'd captured weeks before we'd fallen in love. And in the center, the photograph that had started everything, the elderly couple in Central Park, their hands intertwined despite arthritis and age and everything life had thrown at them. It's beautiful, Lorenzo said, appearing at my side in the dark suit he wore for formal occasions. You've captured something true, something real. I learned from the best. I touched the scar on my shoulder, visible above the neckline of my dress. Your father's tattoo. The truth will set you free. I finally understand what it means. Tell me. It means being honest about who we are, what we've done, what we need. I turned to face him. I needed to save you that night at Celestino's. Not because I knew you, but because I knew myself. I couldn't watch someone die without trying to help. That's my truth. And mine, Lorenzo said quietly, is that I needed you to save me. Not just from the bullet. From a life where everything was transaction and nothing was real. You gave me something worth protecting beyond the family business. Worth living for beyond obligation. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and my breath caught. Luciana Reyes. He opened the box to reveal a ring. Simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the light. Will you marry me? Will you spend your life documenting truth while I spend mine making sure you're safe to do it? Will you be my wife, my partner, my home? I looked at this dangerous, beautiful man who'd seen me when I was invisible, who'd given me back my dreams, who'd shown me that love wasn't about safety or certainty, but about choosing someone and being chosen in return. Yes, I whispered. Yes to all of it. He slid the ring onto my finger and kissed me as applause erupted around us. Our friends, our found family, celebrating a love story that had started with a bullet and led to this moment. A story of truth in shadows, of being seen and choosing to stay, of two broken people who'd found each other in the worst possible moment and discovered that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best endings. Lorenzo Valenti had claimed me that night at Celestino's, whether he'd meant to or not, and I'd claimed him right back.